So the second segment kicks off with the panel speakers that is going to talk about governance, safety, and cybersecurity in the generative AI era. So without further ado, let's invite the panel speakers up here while I introduce their bio. We've got Mr. Marcus Dillon in, who is the Chief Information Security Officer of Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau, CPIB. Marcus is currently the Chief Information Security Officer for CPIB Singapore. He is also instrumental in designing and implementing agency-wide security strategies, mitigating risk and ensuring compliance with industry standards and regulations. Prior to CPIB, Marcus was a cluster lead for the Transport Critical Information Infrastructure Cluster at Cyber Security Agency of Singapore. Let's give a round of applause for Marcus. And next up, we have Clemens Tan, Partner Cyber Security and Risk of NCS Group. Clemens is a partner for Digital Trust and CISO Advisory. He has over 20 years of experience and professional certifications leading cybersecurity and data privacy IT audit, governance, risk, and compliance. He functions across all three lines of defense, leading financial institutions and consulting firms, serving clients with high security requirements across Asia Pacific, including Singapore and China. And next we have Dr. Wuza. He's a co-founder and CEO of Better Data. And Wuza has a PhD in privacy engineering and has been designing security hacks for the last 5 years. Currently, he is the CEO and co-founder of Better Data AI, a synthetic data company focusing on generative AI and privacy engineering. Let's give him a round of applause. Last but not least, can we invite Mr. Tai Yi-Lun, Solutions Director of SenseTime International. He's a Solutions Director at SenseTime, spearheading the advancement and localization of state-of-the-art and groundbreaking AI products. Yi-Lun plays a pivotal role in driving the company's growth and expanding its influence in the region. All right, so this is our panel of distinguished speakers. With that, I'm going to invite Dr. James Ong up to facilitate the panel. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me? Good. Glad that many of you are back after the last panel just now on Frontier and AI. This second panel will be on a related topic on the governance, the safety, alignment, ethics, all related to and cybersecurity of AI. And we have a very interesting set of speakers. As you see, we actually curated with different background, right? Of course, I start with Marcus. I just want to make a comment first. Marcus from CBIB, right? CPIB is the anti-corruption arms of the government. Oh, yeah. That's right. So we are very privileged to have him here, but he can't say much on that, but you probably expect him to have very, very qualified credential, right? Then we have Clemens from NCS, one of the top experts with MAS background on cybersecurity and risk as well. Then we have Chai Lun from SenseTime, responsible for many of their business. And SenseTime is one of the companies who offer all kind of security solution. Also highly focused on ethics and governance as well, because I worked with them for several years. Then we have Uze, a promising talent in Singapore. Could be building one of the greatest AI company in Singapore. They do synthetic data. It's a type of AI for good company. So this is a startup. In fact, Uze just raised $1.6 million in funding in a very difficult environment. And so one of the few companies that people look towards as a promising technology startup that actually do good with AI. So as such, I think we'll do a poll first, right? Daryl, can we put the poll? For all of you, can you please scan to do a survey? Because the feedback will be very helpful to us. And the survey is, what do you think? What do you think is the biggest risk posed by generative AI? What are the biggest risks? Biggest risks, huh? So you can show the result as well. Thank you. I'm sure you're curious about what your friends next to you are thinking. Now we started with cybersecurity. Maybe there's only one person feeling. You guys got to do your job. Okay, now we have end of humanity. Wow, cybersecurity, end of humanity. By the way, this suggestion for the post, suggested by Marcus. I already give credit to him for making this suggestion as well. Yeah. Education, society and societal and political risks, AI for war. Okay, good. These are all okay. Education seems to bum out right now, but cybersecurity, deepfakes, misinformation. I think it's part of the topic was discussed in the last session, right? In the last panel. So actually, it's quite correct. I think like what Brian from Microsoft had mentioned earlier, right? You really have to watch out for what you're getting out there right now. You can never know what you're getting, right? So as such, with generative AI, we have different service professional, technology provider like Yilun and Uze. With the new whole generative AI, it's a whole brand new game for all of us in your life right now. If you were exposed to scan on, let's say, by banking, right? Your bank account, get ready for a lot more of that. In fact, you thought you might be scammed by somebody you thought is your husband or your wife or your kids all together. So maybe I start with Yilun. What do you think are your perspective on this problem?
From my perspective, right, I think the biggest threat will be more on cybersecurity, right, for deepfakes, where a lot of misinformation can be actually brought to the public, the member of the public, especially with deepfakes itself, where short videos or video or information in the online space, and this can actually brings up a lot of different feelings from the member of public itself, whereby, let's say, you have elections coming, the US elections. I think that is one of the pretty hot topic that was in the past, where misinformation was actually very popular. Yeah, so generative AI itself, right, I think in cybersecurity is a big threat. And another threat will be more on generating illegal content. Yeah, I think that is something that is also a threat to the society itself. Yeah.
I see. Okay. Can I ask you a more specific question? Do you personally think generative AI like ChatGPT or Midjourney are safe to use?
I think they are safe to use in terms of different type of perspective, right? Yeah, it is actually, all these tools are actually tools for people to use. And at the end of the day, it is a matter of how we use them. I've seen many examples where people try to hack GPT, where they make GPT think that it is of a different persona and try to get it to answer. And then based on the response by GPT itself, they screenshot it and post it online as fake news. So it really depends on how we use the tool itself. It should be used in a better way, and that's where I think ethics and governance come in, regulations from authority. I think this is actually very important, where we should really start to look at how we can regulate the entire AI industry in this sense, where the information, the inputs, the data should all be more transparent. Yeah.
Okay, so basically watch out for how you use it. Watch out for the AI ethics and governance when those two are being built. We can come on more detail later on. Clarence, you are expert in this area. What do you think?
Well, I first say that nobody has really a good grasp of what the future holds for all of us. And generative AI, as mentioned, is a tool, right? It can be used for good and bad things, right? So it can be creating a more secure world if you use it in the right way. But it can also used by hackers in the underworld that does damage, right? So that is where, for any new inventions, there's always pros and cons, good and bad, depending on how you use it. So like Elon has mentioned. So I agree with that. I think the other point I want to make is cybersecurity itself has not been solved as a problem. And now with generative AI, we're introducing another sophisticated problem, right? When the two worlds meet, actually, where the world become a more unsafe world, unfortunately. And this is something that I think we need to get the best of our people to work together for the common future. right? And a common future is like, what is mentioned. The threat of it is the end of humanity. It is a real risk that is happening right here. And you have probably heard of people who, sign petition to stop that movement of generative AI. But it will not stop, unfortunately, right? The tool is already out there, and it will just get more and more sophisticated. What we need to learn to do is to be able to know how to adapt to it, and keeping to our ethics and integrity as a human race to make sure that anything that we use, AI or otherwise, is serving our humanity purpose. I think that's very important, right? And all of us need to rally together for this newer order.
So if I understand correctly, what Clement is saying is that cybersecurity is really very difficult to solve. It's not solved yet. With generative AI, it's going to double or triple the complexity, right? Then, consistent with what Elon has mentioned, we need to focus on governance and ethics as well. So may sound like a very philosophy class thing, but all the things you learn about humanity and philosophy start to play a role in technology right now. So get ready, we cover more of that. Okay, Marcus, now share your perspective.
From my perspective, I echo what Clement has mentioned about governance, ethics, and all this. But I think ultimately the fundamental biggest risk that we face in a new generative AI is the trust. How to create the business trust, how to trust using the tools itself, and making sure the OEM can be trusted. These are the ultimate thing that is needed to move forward in generative AI, and that poses the biggest risk to our environment currently.
Okay. Just since you are doing it, I'm curious, how many of you trust ChatGPT when you use it? Can you please raise your hand? 1, 2. There's a small minority, they actually trust. But do you still use it anyway? Please raise your hand. So you have something that you don't trust, but you still use it. That's very ironical, right? So we need to consult a psychologist to sort this thing out, right? Maybe Wendy can help a little bit later on, right? Now, Jose, you're a smart dude, I call him. He's very, very smart. I talked to him many times. Really very brilliant. So do you think this thing is trustworthy?
Definitely not. I think similar to uncertainty, it's very difficult to quantify the risks posed by generative AI. But I think if I were to quantify it I would do so in 3 different formats. So the first thing is on the data level itself. Most of the foundational models that Gen AI models are trained on is data available on the internet. So we all know data on the internet can be true, it cannot be true. So that's where the challenge is, how do you classify good information versus bad information and fine-tune your models accordingly. And the second challenge on the data part is IP attribution. I never gave anyone access to use my data to train their models, and when they do so, how they are going to incentivize me. So right now, this is not a concern, but when we talk about Web3, when we talk about data ownership, when we talk about data tokenization, this topic will come up again and again. So that's where OpenAI recently announced that they are looking at a pro-copyright AI model, that if someone can sue them, you use my data, they are going to pay them for their contribution. So IP attribution and then classifying information true versus false is on the data layer. On the models itself, the ability for them to generate information, how do you classify them true and how do you classify them false again is a very big, very subjective topic. And I think from an education perspective, there are many tools that are up and coming to say if a certain piece of information was generated through AI or was it not. So that kind of, I think, restrictive measures will be in place as we go into the future. And ultimately, the application layer of the models itself, like how, as regulators, as academicians, as users, commercial vendors, how we are going to commercialize these technologies for the benefit of humanity, as my fellow panelists mentioned.
Okay, quite a complicated answer, right? Quite sophisticated. Probably need another time to explain. But I just want to bring out one thing. I mean, Jose used to be a hacker, right? he used to hack the Ethereum or something like that. You want to share a little bit on that? What you have done from the other side?
So this was during my PhD. My PhD has been all about data security, data privacy. And one of my projects was to ethically hack the Ethereum blockchain. So I reverse engineered their encryption algorithm, got access to over 600 wallets. I had their private keys. And in short, I could get the money out without them realizing.
So you're a little bit like the bad guy on the good side. Is that right?
Exactly.
So this is what he does. So he finds holes in the Ethereum, which is not easy to do. That means you have to really be very, very sharp. But he's doing it for the good side, like finding what is the vulnerability and then etc. I think you have to do more on the AI side right now because the challenge is going to be bigger than just Ethereum, right? So okay, I like to. I think there's music over the other side. Yeah. So so next thing is the following. We're going to cover the questions of what have you done or what do you think is the right way to govern generative AI. Maybe I start with Elon again. What have SenseTime has done to you just released a large language model also, right? So I'm sure you have done something to do it right. Yeah.
Yeah, so for SenseTime itself, we basically just released some of our AI, generative AI models from large language model to image generation. Yeah, so and what we have done in terms of making sure that the models that we develop are right for usage is basically we split into different areas, right? The first area will be more on data that we collect. There are there are some technical methods that we use for by filtering the data. I think the first is more on data auditing, where we audit the data, the type of data coming in, and the next is more on cleaning the data, making sure that through maybe NLP technology, we filter certain content of the data itself and translate it. Yeah, and I think the last part of it is more of data representation. Yeah, we make sure that the data that we collect are represented across different type of the entire range itself, right, the spectrum itself, so that we do not have any data bias. The model that we train based on the data can be effectively used by the users itself. So that is the first part based on data. Then we have ethical framework within the organization itself, where we look at what the type of development model, and the entire development pipeline itself, where the developers, the researchers adhere to the guideline. Yeah, this will allow the models that are trained to be regulated. Yeah, so this is the second part that we, in terms of the model development. Then I think the last part is more of the application itself, where when we deploy the AI model to the mass market itself, to the public, we implement filtering technology. I think this is mainly also used by most of the other generative AI providers, where we before the results are being published to the end users itself, they will go through a content moderation pipeline, where any of the illegal content or any hallucinated content are actually removed before we provide the response to the users.
Wow. I think that what Elon has mentioned, to prepare a large language model, which is a generative AI, there's a lot of work needs to be done. And I worked with SenseTime for a few years just to publish some paper to talk about thought leadership, about governance and ethics. And I think they're really doing some work there to make sure that the things are safe to be used. But it's not an easy problem altogether, right? That's why we have NCS from Clemens. I'm sure NCS is pushing very hard with this kind of services out there so that you can build systems that are safe and with good governance. You want to comment on that, what you guys are trying to do?
Yes, that's right. Our company is a system integrator and a technology consulting company. And we look into the crystal ball and see what is the future like. And we are placing 4 tech bets. One of it is on digital trust, right? So now the one who is leading a charge on digital trust and CISO advisory. What it means is to actually combine cybersecurity, data privacy, AI governance, and technology risk management under one roof. So we are getting all the necessary experts to come together and provide it as a service to clients to be able to bring safety into the digital transformation journey that every company is now embarking on. I think digital trust is getting more important now with the generative AI movement. People are seeing that, it's no longer just about compliance. It's no longer about just, a rules-based framework and all that are very important. But unfortunately, generative AI went beyond that at a much faster pace. And there is no regulations, no framework, no national standards you can rely on. What you then have to rely on will be ethics, your integrity, and having a risk-based framework. What that means is actually that you understand what the crown jewels in your company are, what are the people and process and technology that are valuable to you, and combine into a method that is able to help you manage the risk. Right? Easy to say, of course, difficult to do, and that's where you need service providers, consulting companies to help you in the journey, and NCS can help you as well.
Can an SME, how can SME be helped?
Yeah, so SMEs, I think first you need to have a trusted advisor, right? Who is that trusted advisor to you, right? Is it just a firewall company who implement a firewall for you and call it cybersecurity, right? Is it an AI company who give you a generative AI, a ChatGPT like software and then say that it is safe? Who is to be able to give you a second opinion? To be able to say, can I have an expert to check on this and tell me what is it, right? So I'm sure when you go to the doctor, you don't want to just hear from one doctor you have cancer. You will go for a second opinion for such important things. So for SMBs, I think you need to not trust just one vendor. First, the SMBs by themselves won't have the enough capacity and capability to do everything themselves, right? So they need a trusted advisor who will be able to see non-product centric point of view to be able to advise them in the best interest of the SMB business.
Okay. Marcus, you're in the government also. Tell me from your understanding in the community, what is government doing? Regulations, possibility, or what you guys are already practicing in terms of government standards? Not about your department per se, right? Dealing with generative AI is going to affect all the government department anyway.
I would say that for that position is actually quite new on generative AI. Currently, there's a lot of plans, but there's no concrete plan currently on how to govern this generative AI. Unlike cloud, back in 15 years ago, when cloud first started, there are organizations such as the Cloud Security Alliance that actually helps to set up the roadmap, the governing rules on how to govern clouds, how to ensure the end users of the cloud is protected, because with all the big players for cloud, if you are not big enough, you have no muscles against them. So that's where you need to have a collective effort to do that. And currently, I don't see that happening for AI, especially generative AI. Maybe there could be eventually there could be an organization doing that part of work, similar to the Cloud Security Alliance. Yeah.
Okay. Basically, you're saying is that this whole generative AI is moving so quickly and is changing so quickly. Even our government don't have any measure at the moment. So
I need to correct that. It's not the government, it's my view.
Oh, your view, his personal view. Okay, sorry. Wow, got to be very careful what I say. Huh? Yeah, but anyway, this thing is moving so quickly. I mean, even as technology provider, right? Many of you are including, we talked to Microsoft and NVIDIA. Yeah, many things are still being figured out. Even as researchers, they're also sorting out as they go along, right? Uze, any thoughts on this? What is the best way to govern? How does your solution help to achieve that governance, right? For example. That's a very interesting question. How does Uze's better data solution help AI company like Wendy's company to achieve better quality of data for governance, as an example?
Yes. So I think from a governance perspective, regulations are still trying to catch up. As we speak right now, there is no gold standard out there, so to speak. There is no certification that let's say better data can get and say our synthetic data is good to go for anyone and everyone. So it's quite a finger in the air, but we strongly believe that regulators have to come in contact with technology providers like ourselves, together with academia as well as commercial institutions. So right now, our goal is to provide a platform that can standardize all of them, bring them together, and all of them can comment what are applicable and feasible use cases for synthetic data that can allow all of them to communicate openly when it comes to data sharing or accessing data itself.
I'm just curious, how many of you know what is generative synthetic data? If you know what it is, can you raise your hand? Okay, they need to be, maybe quickly explain. If you have real data, you're always afraid to give away, right? Because you have your privacy information. What better data does is take your structured data, generate into another set of data, but no sensitive data. But because the data retains certain pattern characteristic, it allows you to be used to train model, so that real data train the model, to make the AI system better. Because one of the reasons why governance is the issue is because nobody wants to share the data because it's their asset. It's also sensitive. It's also anti the PDPA law, right? So Uze and his team are trying to solve this problem. That's why they got funded. That's the reason. Because if they solve this problem, we will unleash a lot of good data into the market without affecting the privacy. So it's like the best of both worlds. I hope that, am I explaining correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is in a new area of technology. If you're in the investment field, this is a promising field of AI for good. That's how I felt, right? So now I want to move to the next poll. Daryl, this next poll is going to be very interesting. Please answer very carefully, okay? Because it matters. Okay, can you please scan? I need everybody participation. Trust me, this question is related to your future. The question is, which is the biggest existential threat to humanity? Existential threat. That means lights out, over, right? The choices are nuclear war, Earth hit by asteroid impact, engineered pandemics, virus, climate change, or AI? I'll be very curious what your answer is. Which one is the biggest threat to humanity existence? Forget about education, healthcare. When the world is over, right? Unless you follow Elon Musk and fly to the Mars, right? Basically. Want to see the answer? Who wants to see the answer? Nobody want to see the answer? Then we're going to skip it. Okay. Wow, interesting. 44% on climate change is the end of the world. 25% on AI. 15% on nuclear war. And then engineered pandemic, we've just gone through COVID, right? Earth hit by asteroid. According to the data I got, actually climate change and the rest are actually very small percentage. AI is 10%. Because this is at least the data I got from a report. If you want the report, I can send to you all, basically. Now, this is interesting, right? So now, assuming AI is the bad one, right? Keep that in mind. Today, you learn something that potentially AI will cause existential threat. Governance become very important. So how many of you heard the word alignment to human values? Alignment to human values? How do you get AI to align to human values, right? Okay, that is a very important question. So how do you make sure the AI you create align to us? All right? Who wants to take on this question? How do you ensure alignment to human values? Anyone? Any thoughts?
Maybe let me start first, right? I think first we need to have a feedback loop from a human to the machine to be able to tell them what good looks like, what is expected behavior for a human, right? So that sounds easy, but it's actually difficult to implement in practice because do we really understand ourselves well enough to be able to program it into the machine? Right, so that is where human over the loop, even the loop kind of concepts come in, where there will be a human providing the feedback to the machine. But that would mean that you need to train the data. You need to also be dynamically able to influence the machine behavior, right? So ChatGPT now is pre-trained, right? The P is pre-trained transformer, so meaning it is pre-trained on a large language model, a large data set, right? But if you were to go into a human co-pilot method, right? And we have heard from Microsoft how that works. It is a journey, right? That you need to have humans, machine coming together, working together, right? So to my point just now, I mean, we as humanity need to work together with the machines to be able to make a better future. I think that is a real task, and I won't say that we have no need in the future anymore. AI can take over our jobs completely, at least not in the near future, but we need to make the machine able to understand human mankind, and in that process, actually, we get to know ourselves better as well.
Very interesting answer. I'll comment on that later on. Any other, anyone to respond to this question? How do you make sure AI is aligned to us?
I think I'll bring back to the earlier question about trust.
Yeah.
Okay. To create the trust is the only way that we can actually battle against these existential threats. One way to do it is to actually govern it in the organization better. If you are using it as a user of, example, ChatGPT, maybe you could actually put in place the acceptable use policy to ensure that the user know how to use it. And if you are developing something, the organization need to know how to leverage on the OEM of this AI technology, which is maybe built on clouds, and what information will be shared with them, and how to ensure that the not excessive privacy is actually protected. The assurance needs to be given by this OEM to the organization that actually use these products.
So we are saying that how the selection of the provider or OEM, like Microsoft, is very important, right? Making sure that they are comply with privacy law, they are also doing things. Is that what you mean, right?
Yes, because without that, and for small organization, without the muscles, it'll be very difficult. Yeah.
Okay, so they are the trusted provider. You want to mention? I want to respond to these questions. How to get alignment?
I think what they mentioned actually pretty much covered the quite a full spectrum already, right? I think another part will be more on education itself, where we need to start influencing the younger folks on how AI can be used and transformed, so that they, at a young age, they know what to expect when they go to the working life, and how should they use AI from the beginning itself. Yeah, rather than when they, after they go to the working stage, then they understand how to use AI. So I think that is something that, in terms of education, where we can also align the younger generation on the usage of AI. Yeah.
Uze, you want to comment on this?
Sure.
How to get alignment?
So I think when we talk about human alignment, I hope you're enjoying the background music as well.
Yeah, very interesting background music.
So as the name suggests, oh yeah, getting quite loud.
Probably have to speak closer and shout a little bit.
So as the name suggests, human alignment, it has to come from humans themselves. So you can think of AI models as newborn babies, and to a baby, all you ever gave, if it was a hammer, everything else is a nail. So that's the philosophical concept. And same story with AI models as well. Human values are something that you cannot codify, you cannot quantify. They have to be taught over time. So it's a function of time. And same analogy when they mentioned there has to be a feedback loop from humans in terms of training and fine-tuning the models. It has to be the only constant in furthering or maturing the AI technology.
Wow. Okay, I think I want to summarize what they just said, because I know it's quite different, quite complex or very consistent, right? How many have children? Please raise your hand. Is it easy to nurture your children? Growing from 0, 1-year-old, 2-year-old to primary school, secondary school, right? Now, I think AI is going to be like that. It's an ongoing nurturing process of nurturing it with the right data. Make sure you give it the right clean data, right? If it's the wrong data, you come up with kids who think crazy thing. So that is why the data input is important. But you also need to make the data available. If it's not available because you don't want to share, it also becomes a problem. So these are part of the process of nurturing AI, as consistent with what 4 of them has mentioned. And I think Marcus has mentioned that make sure you use the right vendor who know how to do it as well. Because if the vendor is not clean, whatever, just like you send him to the wrong school, the school will do crazy things to your children. I think that is the best analogy for you to understand because AI is very organic. It keeps changing. So it's not a one-off saying, I buy a car, I'm done. It's a lifetime nurturing of it all this time to the data. So all of them have difficult job. That's why their job may sound like boring, but it's really very complicated to do all this thing, right? So I'd like to have, given the limited time, how many of you have questions? Just curious. Nobody has questions? It's existential threat, you know? Guys, you got to have at least some critical question about that. You need to have critical thinking, all right, for this question. Wow, the music is really distracting, but never mind, we try to survive through it. I just want to ask you all one question related to it. You know there's a big AI race coming out right now, right? Microsoft with OpenAI, with Google, SenseTime, iFlyTech also launched something. What do you all think? Is it a problem? Okay, Uze, you're the smart guy. Do you think it's a problem?
So yeah, I think going forward, when we talk about fine-tuning the models itself, it's private companies versus public communities. And if you put a number to that, open source models or public communities have the greater numbers. And based on that, I strongly believe that anyone who adopts an open source approach to commercialize their models, to open it up to the public, and let the public guide its direction, will have the upper hand, rather than a private company keeping their models closed source and dictating what's good and what's bad. So, high five to open source contributions.
There is a new movement called open source approach to deal with AI, so that it's transparent. So I think that's an interesting suggestion. What do you think? Is it a, so it's good, it's healthy to have open source movement to counter the big guy as well, right? By the way, this issue has become so critical. The President of the United States invited all these guys to come to the White House. So you be very concerned. Please, I think this is something you want to pay attention to. Marcus, what do you think of the AI race?
I think the AI race is a good one. End of the day, it actually helps us to do things faster. Instead of coming up with a procedure manually, we just call up ChatGPT to give me a procedure to do something, to scan for certain privileged access. That helps, but we have to be mindful. We need to work faster than the adversary because we know that the adversary are doing similar things to create maybe phishing emails at a very faster rate to actually hit you. At the same time, today they are also doing something like to program their malwares to at a faster rate to avoid being detected by the anti-malware. So it's really about speed. Who gain the highest speed to do what you actually wanted.
So you think it's a healthy thing, right, to have the race? Okay, very interesting. Clemens, what do you think? Is it a good thing the AI race is happening?
Well, it depends on which area. I think if it is for functional efficiency optimization, yes. I think having competitive pressure makes them work harder, faster, yes. But if it is something to do with touching on ethics, data privacy, human rights, then no.
No.
So there must be some guardrails, right? Safeguards that need to be put in place. And how can that governance framework happen? That's a bigger question, right?
Okay.
And it has to be international because now the China-US tensions, you can't just leave it to one country to do that, right? And within the country, US, you have Google versus Microsoft, right? That alone, the competitive pressure is on, and each company will have to do faster and better than the others, right? So I think that is unhealthy, right? It has to be some governance body, and I think some of the countries are already starting the work, right? So European Union is coming up with AI Act, right? AI law. and Singapore has the AI model framework and stuff like that. That is all in good direction, but I think we need to have an international level collaboration for that, to make sure that humanity is not compromised in the middle of it.
Cannot compromise. Yilun, SenseTime also trying to, you're part of the AI race. Comment on that.
Yeah, so SenseTime, I mean, we are as competitor with Google, Microsoft, all this, right? But we are more from the China side, yeah. And I think it is, in terms of the AI race itself, is something that is good, where it really helps productivity. But going back to Marcus' concern, right, is that companies that are joining the race need to implement ethics within the organization. Yeah, and it has to be more transparent, yeah, in terms of the type of data that's collected, how they train the model, the entire process end to end itself. And I think regulations itself by international entities should be implemented, especially at the country level.
Okay, I think given the noise and the time, I just want you all to answer one question. Last question. Among the survey question, which one is the biggest risk? Uze?
People.
People is not on the list. The rest of the problem are caused by people anyway. Among these, which one do you think is the biggest risk?
So right now, if I had to pick, I would say climate change.
Climate change. How about you, Marcus?
Climate change, because every day we feel it's much hotter now.
Okay. Clemens?
I would agree climate change is still number one, but I am looking at number two and number three. I'm afraid of a AI-enabled nuclear war.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Yilun?
I think at the moment it will be climate change as we are feeling it now, especially within this period.
Okay, I see. Good. Thank you very much for all your input. I know this is a very complex subject. Yeah, that needs to be addressed in the future. So come for more events to talk about it in the future. Thank you very much for all the speakers.
Thank you very much, panel speakers.